The Friday Fenway Rundown. I'm Chris Cotillo, Sean McAdam here too. I don't have my professional microphone because I went to visit my parents for a day or two, and the mic is at my place in Boston. So Sean McAdam has his, so you're going to be sounding much, much better here over the next 30 minutes or so.
Just for these next 30 minutes?
Yeah, you'll make up for the content deficit that we usually have with the audio quality. As you can tell by the backdrops, if you're watching on the YouTube version of this, I am home. Sean is home. It is snowy out-ish, not snowing, but there is snow on the ground. We have made our triumphant returns from Fort Myers. Chris Smith is down there for a couple more days covering for us, and then Sean will be back in no time. It'll feel like you never left when you get down there next weekend. I'll be back for a second stint too, but we thought we'd come on here now that things have settled down, and talk about kind of our takeaways from what was 2.5 weeks for both of us down there in Fort Myers at spring training. I'll start with this. Now that I look back, and we've talked about this stuff on the pod and both the emergency pod with after Bregman signed, and then our car pod the other day going to Port Charlotte, which feels like a month ago. It was eventful. You know, a lot of times you get down there and there's kind of not much to talk about. There's not much to cover. There's not that much in the way of interesting stories, but we had right from the jump Alex Bregman signing, all the impacts of that. The Devers thing, obviously a massive story, probably a bigger story than just a Bregman signing. Casas weighing in, the big three prospects, Cutter Crawford's injury, where the roster goes from here, a few different guys having setbacks, position battles, a lot going on. And so, you know, in terms of what we saw over those 2.5 weeks, kept us pretty busy. A lot to get to. I think we got to it all. A lot of very long days, especially considering the amount of pollen and how much I couldn't breathe for the whole time. But just, I mean, I think overarching thing, there's a pretty high level of interest in this team right now and all the drama and question marks that are still ongoing with 4 weeks to go before opening day.
Yeah, I think healthy. This is a pretty talented roster, one capable of, as I've said, finishing ahead of Baltimore in the American League East, and perhaps, if things go right, really challenging the Yankees for first place. The caveat, and it's a significant one, is health, because we are just under 4 weeks from opening day, and already, as we sort of anticipated, you talked about this a lot with, the whole six-man rotation and what are they going to do with all this starting pitching? It's an embarrassment of riches until it's not. And we've already seen some injuries really have an impact there. Not only Cutter Crawford, but Brian Bayo, who's behind. He did throw a bullpen today, getting closer. He thinks he can be ready for opening day. Wouldn't surprise me if they held him back for a start or two, just as a precaution. Still waiting for Lucas Giolito to take the hill in a Grapefruit League game. So there's a lot going on there. And then there's the Abreu stuff. And could he be ready for opening day? If not, does that pave the way for Roman Anthony making the team, at least for a short while, out of camp? A lot of moving parts, a lot of things still to be decided, a lot to be determined by injuries and health. But we can see that this is a pretty talented team, and I think one that's significantly improved over a year ago.
For sure. And I just did a roster projection that delayed the recording of this pod for a little while. The roster projection that just went up. Um, the only guy out of all those guys that you mentioned that I have on the injured list to start the year, well, the two, I guess, significant contributors, Cutter Crawford, who I think is at this point 0% chance to be ready, and Masataka Yoshida, which, as we talked about, and we will talk about more today, having him on the IL actually helps you solve all the problems in the roster spots that you have to start the year. To me, Bayo has 4 weeks to ramp up. Giolito is on track where he was supposed to be after throwing live the other day. Bueller, he's a little behind Crochet and Hauk, but I think that's because he pitched into what, November with the Dodgers and obviously came off Tommy John. In the bullpen, everybody appears to be relatively healthy, other than Penrod, who we know is out. He was probably projected for AAA anyway. And Abreu cleared for baseball activities today and telling our Chris Smith that he should be ready to go in 4 weeks. Um, really, to me, the big storyline here, knowing that we knew Yoshida was going to be the way it is and will be, is Crawford. And I think that's the one to kind of keep an eye on. Like, will that require surgery? Will it require a lengthy absence? If rest hasn't gotten him here to a point where he can throw and be doing his progression now, well, what is going to have to happen? He had the whole offseason. He had, something he battled all of last year. So that's the concerning one for me. The rest I kind of file under, it's spring training. They're careful with some guys. If it was the regular season, some of these guys would be out there or progressing even more. Um, that's not the case when it comes to Cutter.
Yeah, and that's a significant guy. Not a number one or even a number two, but somebody who led them in innings, led them in appearances, led them in starts. Um, to not be with him at the start is concerning, and I think even more concerning is that this bothered him for most of last year. They kept it quiet, didn't talk about it a lot. He kind of managed it. The expectation was over the winter that the rest and rehab was going to take care of it. It has not. And to me, that screams that surgery could be on the table here. I don't know how significant it would be. It doesn't. It's obviously not a blown out knee. It's not a torn ACL.
Yeah.
There's some patella tendonitis or irritation in there that probably would not be more than a month or two sideline, but that could still be significant and eat into their depth. And I feel like they're kind of downplaying the severity of this. Like, oh, he just needs more time to rest. Well, he that was the prescription and the prognosis for the off season. And then in December he had a setback. And here we are, and it's still not a healthy knee, and he's still not ready to go. To me, that would worry me if I were the Red Sox.
Yeah, and I think, makes you wonder also if this is why they made sure not just to get Crochet, but to get Crochet and Bueller and build out this group in that way. I do think they're in a pretty good, place in terms of being able to, manage this. Um, you have obviously the five guys that we've talked about at length: Crochet, Bueller, Hauk, Giolito, and Bayo. If they're all good to go, that's a good starting five right there. And you have your five. You also have Priester and Fitz and Criswell in the mix. So you have eight guys still, even with Crawford down right now. And I think that speaks to what this rotation can be. Would you rather have Cutter Crawford in the mix than Priester or Fitz? Of course, he's a guy with major league track record and all that. So that does come into play, but I still think it can be a pretty good rotation group.
Oh, yeah, I do too. I'm not sounding the alarm bells
Right.
here or panicking. I'm just saying the fact that you're already down one of your projected starters with a month to go before spring training is a reminder of how fragile these things can be and how quickly you can eat into depth. And there's no question that with those three guys stashed in Worcester for now, Criswell, Fitz, and Priester, they are better positioned to withstand a loss like this than they have been in any recent season. But it's still already an injury before you get to the starting line. And yet another reminder that everybody now, you can never have enough starting pitching.
Yeah, an inevitable thing, as we've talked about for now weeks and months. Unfortunate, but just part of it. Are you worried about any of the other guys a little bit more than I am?
Well, I just, I guess I look at more the quantity of the nagging injuries rather than the severity.
Yeah.
Connor Wong's got a shoulder issue. Romy Gonzalez has got an oblique. Willie Abreu's got a GI virus. These are all minor things that don't seem like they're going to keep guys out of action for an extended period of time, but it's more the volume of them and the fact that they're occurring before we even get to March. I mean, today's the final day of February, and you've got guys banged up enough so that they haven't been able to get on the field in exhibition play.
Yeah, I mean, I would say again, my read on that is it's February, and so they're not going to force it. But devil's advocate here is the Red Sox always underplay until they overplay with a surgery announcement when it comes to these injuries, right? And they always kind of slow play it and tell us, oh, it's not that bad, it's nothing serious, it's nothing to worry about. And then all of a sudden it is, and it's more severe and all that stuff. Obviously, the big thing that dominated the entire time we were down there, for better or for worse, was the Rafi Devers DH talk, the Alex Bregman third base, second base, Kristian Campbell. Everybody knows all the characters at play here. I just did a radio hit in Albany, and it kind of dawned on me, like, imagine you're Kristian Campbell, and you just had this amazing year. You went from Georgia Tech to the verge of a major league roster in a year, as a fourth round pick, and all of a sudden your existence is causing Alex Bregman and Rafael Devers and all these bona fide major league stars to not know where they're going to play. It speaks to, of course, how the Red Sox feel about him, but I think it's kind of funny. Like, it's his fault, of course, through no fault of his own. Um, my read on this situation stays the same, Sean. It's all about Kristian Campbell. It's all about Kristian Campbell. It's all about Kristian Campbell. And finally, it's all about Kristian Campbell. This is not about how Devers looks at third. It's not about how Bregman looks at second. It's not about Von Grissom, and it's not about David Hamilton. It's not about Romy Gonzalez. It's just, if Campbell's ready, Devers is going to DH. If Campbell's not, Devers is going to play third. And then when Campbell's ready, Devers is going to DH. I feel like it's a super simple way of putting it, but just to me feels like kind of the elephant in the room, as we've talked about and reported. Um, and I think there's other impacts of this. Like, I think the, David Hamilton hype, the Von Grissom hype early in camp, eh, still Campbell's the guy here, and Campbell's the reason for all this talk.
Yeah, I see your point. I guess maybe the in the bigger picture, I would say, and this sounds like a cliche, it's about putting the best nine guys on the field,
Yeah.
and that includes Kristian Campbell because of what he's been able to do in terms of making an impression on the front office and the coaching staff. They love his bat. They love how hard the ball comes off his bat. They love his bat to ball skills, and they are seeing improvement around second base. Doesn't mean he's going to win a gold glove there or
Nope.
dazzle
It
anyone.
means he's going to be a DH, and that's that. It's determined already.
Uh, I think that having Campbell there forces their hand a little bit, and it's a good sign that of these three top prospects, the first one who is closest to making his major league debut has been so impressive that the Red Sox are reluctantly willing to step on some toes here and deal with an unhappy Rafael Devers by moving him off third base and putting Bregman at third.
That would talk
That
about
probably will
crazy.
not be the first time I do that. A couple of B guys who played in the infield in Houston. Um, but, Bregman is coming off a gold glove season. He's clearly a better defender than Devers. And assuming Campbell displays the ability to play second base, uh, at least in a league average way, and perhaps better, then they're a better team than putting Bregman at second and Devers at third and not utilizing Kristian Campbell. It is, while people are uncertain about the impact it's going to have on Devers and his relationship with the club, I think your conversation with him last week showed that he's not being confrontational here. He doesn't want this to be a drawn out soap opera kind of thing that hangs over him for the whole season. Doesn't mean he's any more comfortable giving up third base and DHing, but it seems like they're inching closer to be able to get him to accept that move.
Yeah.
And if they do, then they are putting together a better team with everybody aligned that way than it would have been with Devers back at third.
Yeah, I wanted to get into that. I think it's sometimes dangerous to get into the whole, like, oh, this is the reporting process, this is how this went down. But I think the conversation with Devers, the way it happened was kind of interesting. You can't put this in the story, so the podcast is a good format to kind of explain. When I went up to him and his translator, Davison Perez, who worked for the Red Sox in two stints for a long time, said, Rafi, do you have a couple minutes? The first thing I asked him was about his shoulders and when he was going to get into games, um, and if he was going to get into games at third. And one of the answers through Davison was, I knew you were going to ask that question. And then a couple minutes in, you go up to these guys, you say, hey, do you have a minute? Do you have a couple minutes? And like 90 seconds in, Rafi said to me in English, you asked for a minute and we're on like 4 or 5 minutes now, which he's done before. Um, So I was like, I don't know if he wants to talk about this. Like, I'm going to keep trying. I'm going to keep pushing. I'm going to keep asking. But like, I don't know if he just wants to leave it where it was. And the more time that went on, it became more like Rafi has things he wants to say. Like Rafi wants to get this stuff off of his chest. Like I'd ask a question, Davison would, Rafi understands in English but gives the answer in Spanish to Davison. Davison would be talking right along and giving the whole answer, and then Rafi would start again and keep going and give more to Davison. Like, I just want to make clear I'm not frustrated. I want to make clear that I'm happy. My kids are happy and safe and healthy. My family's healthy. I'm in a good spot. Like, it's just baseball at the end of the day. And like, he kept adding things from a conversation that started like it might be pulling teeth. By the end, he was like, and also this, and also this. And also this. I'm not frustrated with this, and my relationship with Cora is not going to change. I thought it was pretty interesting. I think, as someone wrote the other day, he's appeared cheery in recent days. That is true. Like he's been smiling, laughing, joking at his locker. That's he's
Working with Bregman at third base. There was some
yeah.
video up yesterday of the
And
two.
I want to touch on that too. I think fans have this like idea that there was this narrative created that it's Bregman versus Rafi and they hate each other, and people are putting out videos and
That's
saying
ridiculous.
it looks like these two really don't get along. That's never been the problem here. The animosity, and I can tell you from talking to people around Devers, the animosity that is real is over the Red Sox going back on their word about him playing at third base for a long time. And now, 2 years after signing that deal, 1 year into the deal, that probably is no longer going to be the case.
And
That's where the frustration is.
we should add that I'm pretty certain that there is frustration that over the winter he was
Right.
repeatedly assured, "Oh, that stuff you're reading about Arenado and Bregman, nah,
Right.
that's just the media throwing stuff out there. We're not doing that. That's a bad look for the front office."
Yeah.
Whether you want to saddle that on Craig Breslow or Alex Cora or both, but they should have been more proactive in preparing him for what now seems like an eventuality. They kind of had this feeling Bregman was going to come back to them, that it was going to get worked out. They may have used Arenado a little bit to help move that needle a little bit. But this was never a casual pursuit of Bregman. Like, well,
Hmm.
let's see if he's interested. No, he was a target all along. It took a long time to come together, but they played it to him like, probably not going to happen. And
Yeah.
that I can understand him being angry about, and he should.
What makes it worse though, and that is the backdrop of Cora over and over and over saying the first conversation we had
Gold,
was with Rafael Devers, not you guys, not you guys, and as you were about to say, saying Bregman as a Gold Glove second
right.
baseman to downplay it. I think, we've talked at times about, in recent years, the Red Sox not being cutthroat enough at times to put the best roster on the table. This was, I think, kind of yeah, we're going to sign him. If it makes Rafi mad, it makes Rafi mad. We'll go back on our word, makes our team better. There's some people are going to say that's the way you should do business. There's others that should, and I think you are saying being more transparent with your franchise player is better. I think that's, therein lies the rub, as I was going to say, as the kids say, but probably as the old say. That is one of those things where, like, it's not a Devers Bregman issue. It's a Devers and his camp looking at this and saying, "What the hell? You did not, prepare me for this when I
Yeah,
signed the
they
deal
did
in the
not
months."
deal in good faith with him. That let's
Yeah.
put it that way. And if this were, I don't know, Tristan Casas or Jaron Duran, and they misled him about what his role was going to be, not a good look. But not the face of the franchise, not the guy who's your only link to your last championship, not your highest paid player. You don't treat everybody the same way. Some guys deserve a little bit more forthcoming treatment, and Devers fits into that category. He didn't get it. He's not happy about it. I don't blame him in that regard.
I just wrote this line in the roster projection when Breslow and Cora say in interviews like the one you did with Breslow the other day, these things tend to work themselves out. That means we're the employee, we're the employer, he's the employee. and he's going to play where we want him to. He's not going to retire. He's not going to demand a trade. Could he be upset about it for a little while? Sure. If the team's winning, as he said to me, that's all that matters at the end of the day. I think that, the idea from people out there who want to pretend that it's all sunshine and rainbows all the time, that there's no animosity here, I think that's complete BS. I think there is. But I don't think it's, going to get to a point of needing a divorce between team and player. I think it's a situation that could have been handled better. They're working to that. They have 4 weeks left. And again, it's all about Kristian Campbell. So you're going to see Devers in games at third. That doesn't mean anything. You're going to see Bregman in games at third and second. Also doesn't mean anything. It really comes down to, the after effects and the aftershocks of what happens up the middle there. We've touched on Campbell. Let's get to the other two of the big three, which has been a lot of topic of discussion the last few days. I think, you said something about Campbell being like the closest to the majors. I would kind of push back on that because maybe he's not. It's just the positional path is cleanest
Yeah, but
for
right.
him.
If
Yeah,
you're talking about ceiling and
right.
talent and everything else, then Campbell is not number one of those three, as good as he is. That designation belongs to Roman Anthony. But until this Abreu setback, as we had talked, there was no clear path for Anthony to make the opening day roster, right? You've got
Yeah.
Duran in center, in left rather, Rafaela in center, and Abreu in right. And that's that. And they're not going to have, nor should they have, Roman Anthony play twice a week coming off the bench in late March and April. But if Abreu is not ready to go, and even if it's put him on the 10-day and he backdate it and he misses the road trip basically and is ready to go by the time they get home, if not for the home opener, then the second home series. I think it's not that hard to imagine Roman Anthony breaking camp with the team now.
Or Trace Thompson. But either way, he's homering in every, I'm kidding, mostly. But I think yeah, I think it's in play. And I think even if Abreu is ready, there's a chance he pushes and they just say, look, Roman, you go to left and Duran, you go to center. Campbell, you can mix in some outfield spots too. Abreu's in right. And Ceddanne Rafaela is the guy that gets pushed down the depth chart, which I think we both think eventually is going to happen, despite the upside there. I don't think the door is closed on him making the opening day roster, even with the healthy Abreu. Point is, they have enough talent and they have enough up there that for a team that wants to contend, where every game's going to matter, they don't have to have Anthony filling an outfield spot to be competitive. Are they better with him in the lineup than Ceddanne Rafaela? Of course. With Campbell, it's like, okay, that position is legitimately wide open. You don't have the, you can talk about, well, Rafaela gives you defensively, especially in center, being a lot more than whatever Grissom or Hamilton can give you on both sides of the ball. To me, it's just that path is clear. And I do want to get to, all the stuff about Marcelo that we've talked about in the last 2 days and has been the big story. A great game yesterday against Major League Pitching, Kenta Maeda. He's a guy that is fully healthy, has looked really good in camp. Alex Cora in his comment said, this is the forgotten guy for some reason because he's been hurt, but don't forget about him. When you talk about ceiling, Sean, there's a case to be made. His ceiling might be as high or higher than the other two. Just the injuries have kind of changed that, and I'm not.
Yeah, he some of that shine has come off him
Right.
because he's missed good chunks of each of the last 2 years. That has people asking, is he injury prone? I don't know if there's such a thing when you have a shoulder issue because you land on it the wrong way and you have a lumbar issue because those things happen. I don't know that suggests that this is going to be a repeating pattern, but it has cost him not only time in the spotlight, as it were, which would keep his name kind of more in the mix, but also development time.
Yeah.
But we're seeing him healthy this spring, and it's early. Obviously, we're just a week into Grapefruit League play, but he has distinguished himself, including, as you noted, that 3-hit performance against the Tigers in Lakeland yesterday, and a reminder that he does have a very high ceiling, and it's probably not going to be long before he forces his way into the picture. And that's when things are really going to get interesting in the infield because I'm not sure how that works out. Does it require Trevor Story to be off to a really poor start offensively? This is a guy that is still under contract and has another couple of years here. It's not like you can ease him out of the picture easily, but they've made it pretty clear that when these guys are ready to play and there's an opportunity, they're going to give it to them. And Mayer comes under that category too.
Yeah, I think, like he could hit 750 in spring training with a bunch of homers and play great defense and maybe put him on the radar, himself on the radar for the opening day roster. But just, people have to remember because people sometimes forget he has 0 games at AAA.
Yep.
Zero. Roman Anthony and Kristian Campbell had, 5, 6 weeks each. This guy has 0. And I know the Red Sox have done it under previous regimes. This is before my time on the beat, but Benintendi skipped AAA, right?
Yes.
So like that's happened. It doesn't
And
happen
and
much
and
today.
Rafi was not there very long,
Right. Um,
but
so
different regimes.
right, and different, roster structures. I don't really know what they were back then when I wasn't covering the team. I had a general idea from afar, but I mean, this is when you're talking about again a crowded infield mix with the guys you have, and Marcelo's working out at third. That's just what they need, someone else in the crowded third base position, right? Um, So I just think that that's one to watch down the line. But to me, he's not in the mix to make the opening day roster no
Yeah,
matter what.
no, under no circumstances do I see that happening. As you said, they do not want to double jump guys here and move him essentially from Portland to the big leagues without so much as an at bat at AAA. So I'd be really surprised if we saw Mayer before June 1st. I think he needs a good couple of months there to round out his development. And then, you react to whatever's happening at the big league level and where does he fit?
Um, I just can't offer this reminder enough that getting bogged down in spring training game performance is maybe the most dangerous thing fans and some members of the media do this time of year. Wilyer Abreu, I will remind everybody, had maybe the worst spring training offensive performance in the history of baseball last year. He was like, this is over exaggerating, but it felt like he was 2 for 70 with 50 strikeouts. It wasn't that bad, but it was not that
And,
far
and it
off.
wasn't and it wasn't much better for the first couple of weeks of the regular season,
Right. And he
including an
turned,
error on opening night
right.
in Seattle that was costly. He did not hit the ground running, but they were patient with him and it paid off.
So those things happen both ways. We've talked with the joke among the beat, and this was even a little bit before my time too. But look at Sam Travis Grapefruit League performances every year versus now. The numbers get inflated or deflated in whatever way. The Red Sox are looking for specific things to work on the backfields. Where guys are in their progressions. They're looking at the complete package. And to think that some guys do win a spot based on an amazing Grapefruit League schedule. But there's a lot more that goes into it. So I think there's these games, for the most part, are on TV and people see them and see Mayer a 3-hit performance yesterday and get all excited. There's a lot more that goes into it. Just be careful as we sit here on February 28th. They are exhibition games for a reason. There is always very little correlation between, how teams perform in the spring training season versus how they do in the regular season.
Yeah,
There's and also players individually too.
30 something years of covering spring training. I would say my takeaway is the perfect spring for a team is to be about 500. You do not want to obviously be 8-20 and look slipshod and not ready to start the season. And it's probably not a great idea to go 22-8 either, because I think you get a little overconfident and people's expectations get out of whack. Go 15-13, keep everybody healthy. And it's my experience that that's the best way to go into the start of the regular season.
Yeah, I mean, I'll push back even on that by saying while you do have those experiences, the Red Sox won a game the other day because a player that neither you or I, as full-time members of the beat, had heard of in Port Charlotte. So that's a win on the ledger. We've never heard of this guy. Something Miller, Tyler Miller, I think. No
Yep,
disrespect to
third
him.
baseman. And to be fair, the production people
That's right. That's where I was going
at
next.
Port Charlotte, Florida, where the Rays play as the home team, had him as Masataka Yoshida because he was wearing Yoshida's number 7. and the ball goes out, and you see on the video scoreboard, home run number one for Masataka Yoshida, and it was not. Spoiler alert! Actually,
No.
Masataka Yoshida. It was a unheralded, frankly, rather anonymous prospect who was getting a couple innings at third base at the end of a road game in spring training.
Yeah, that's what happens. I heard somebody call into a local radio show yesterday, pissed off at Alex Cora because on the day the Red Sox played in Lakeland yesterday, they chose to sit Alex Bregman.
Yeah,
So that's,
yeah.
I mean,
People have a hard time. We even ran into a Hall of Fame player the other day who was unhappy that veterans no longer take bus rides. I don't think I'm speaking out of school when I identify him as Jim Rice, who proudly said, I used to make every trip in spring training because I wanted to get as many at bats. I wanted to see every pitcher I could.
right.
And that's admirable, but it's also from 25 and 30 years ago when Jim was still playing. Those
When
days are over. And now, for the most part, and we should point out that Garrett Crochet is pitching as we speak in a few minutes in Clearwater, Florida. That's about 2.5 hours each way from Fort Myers. I think he wanted to face big league competition as he ramps up and gets ready for the season, and good for him. But that's highly, highly unusual for a player of that stature to take that long a bus ride for the most part. And this is a consumer fraud alert. If you're going to Florida and hoping to see the Red Sox somewhere other than JetBlue Park, be
Or
prepared
or
to watch
Hammond
a, pardon me?
or the
Or,
Twins.
right,
They'll
Hammond
play with
down the
them.
street. But if you're seeing them outside of Fort Myers or Lee County, you're probably going to see a lot of young kids and prospects and sort of 4A type guys
No.
who who are not going to be the stars that you want to see. You don't. It doesn't happen anymore, and that's why Bregman was not in the lineup in Lakeland. It's 2 hours away. Most teams believe that guys get more out of staying back, getting some swings in, working on particular things rather than 4 hours in a bus ride. Alex Bregman has nothing to prove, so he was not there. It was not any conspiracy by Alex Cora and anybody else to sit him.
Well, if you are going to these road games, you are getting to see Meyer, Anthony, and Campbell, right? So
True.
that's worth it. Along with some of these other guys competing for spots. Those will be the stories we'll follow between now and when the season starts in Texas on the 27th. MassLive will have a work from home week for the next week before Sean goes back to um, Fort Myers on Saturday. I'll be following shortly thereafter. In the meantime, lots of coverage on the site as Chris Smith is still down there, and we will have a couple pods next week. What we'll talk about, who knows?